Hello guys and welcome back to Lexalexus. We're carrying on with our championship score predictions. We've already made it to week 2. So, week 1 was pretty ballistic. There were so many incredible scores and I will be reacting to those scores when I'm predicting these games. Also, we've seen some Carabao Cup action from these championship sides as well, which I'll also be giving my reaction to as well. If you guys want to be involved in the prediction league, which is officially underway, do remember to leave your score predictions in the comments down below, and it means that you will score points. If to remind you, an exact score is 3 points. So if you predict 2-1 and it ends 2-1, you get 3 points. If you get a correct result, let's say you predict 2-1 to a game that ended 1-0 to that side, you get 1 point. No points is if you predicted a 0-0 draw and it ended up as a 2-0 win to whoever club. So this is how the point systems work, just in case you have not seen my videos until this point. But with all of that explained, I think we're nearly ready to start off with this video. But before I do, like target I think will be 50 likes. You did really well on my last video, so I've got to appreciate the support that you guys gave that video. Thank you guys so much as always. The subscriber game in the channel today is MC Sketchy. Thank you for recently subscribing to the channel. If you do subscribe to the channel from this video, it is very likely that your name will be read out and shouted out in the next video. If you guys can also share the channel as well, that also really helps too. But without any further ado, let's start predicting week 2. We start off our week 2 predictions predicting Derby going up against Coventry. I don't believe we actually have a Friday night game. That's going to be taken up by the Premier League with Liverpool and Bournemouth. So the first couple of games we are going to be predicting are going to be the 3 going in the early kickoffs at 12:30. So this is the first one that I'm going to predict. Interesting game, this one. Derby did the double over Coventry last season, which leads me to feel a little bit more confident with Derby. There were both sides which I was expecting a little bit more from. Derby did lose against Stoke last time. They actually were pretty clinical with the limited chances they had on goal. Carlton Morris scoring a beautiful goal to take the lead against Stoke. But then right at the end, it was almost like their hard work all really crumbled and Stoke really took advantage. Coventry, they were at home to Hull. They didn't win. In fact, it was a 0-0 draw. A pretty frustrating game. I'm pretty sure they hit the crossbar in one of their attempts, which I think was the closest to anyone from scoring. But Hull were very disciplined defensively. And in terms of their response in the Carabao Cup, Derby were involved in a dramatic game against West Brom where they actually beat them on pens despite only having 1 shot on target and I think conceding up to 20 plus shots. So a very typical John Eustace performance, a real snatch and grab, that one. And Coventry, they were involved in a 1-0 win over Luton Town. Ellis Sims getting the only goal in that game, I believe. So good momentum going into this game after a pretty below par game week 1 performance. But as I said, with Derby having already a pretty strong record against Coventry as of recent head-to-heads, I am leaning towards them. It's home advantage as well, which I think could help Derby for this season. I think they will be relatively strong at home. So prediction, I don't think it'll be high scoring though. I'm going to go for a 1-0 victory to Derby. I haven't really seen either one of these teams being free flowing yet in terms of going forward. So I think attacking wise it won't be completely at the highest quality. But I do think we will get a winner. Let me know what you think in the comments. Next up, we've got Portsmouth going up against Norwich. So in their first 2 games of the season, including the first game week and the Carabao Cup, they both have 1 win and both 1 defeat each going into this game. I was impressed with Portsmouth's away performance against Oxford, considering that was an area which they really struggled with last season. I thought it was a very professional performance. They took their chance when they got it. A pretty poor mistake for Brannigan which led up to the goal. So arguably a little bit fortunate, but again, they've got to take the chances when it's being presented to them, and they did well in that regard. But they followed that up with a defeat against a lower league club in Reading, who are currently rock bottom of League 1 as it stands. Yes, there was rotation there, but Yeah, certainly not the best of momentum going into this game, considering that was a game that they lost at home as well. Wasn't particularly promising there. Norwich, they had a poor game at the start of the season, losing to Millwall at home. It was a game where I actually felt that both teams wrestled control at different points of the game. Millwall were really deadly clinical though, and Norwich, whilst I think they got the goal, with really good pressure from Sargent, leading to the mistake from the goalkeeper, Norwich's defence looked really shaky actually. I think Norwich will be a side that will turn good, but I think that what we saw there is a classic example of a squad that is just a bit raw, that is just not gelling very quickly at this moment of time. But they backed that up with a win in the Carabao Cup against Watford. Sargent and I believe Nunes also being on the score sheet. Prediction here is interesting. So the last game I remember between these two, it was a crazy 5-3 victory to Portsmouth at Carrow Road. It was quite sensational. I don't think we'll get that many goals this time around, but I think with Portsmouth's strong home form, I'm inclined to back them, as a prediction. I think I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to Portsmouth. I fancy both teams to score because I don't think both teams are entirely the strongest defensively, and I certainly do think both attacks can offer something, but I think it will favour Portsmouth, which would be 2 wins out of 2 for Portsmouth, but for Norwich's point of view, that'll be 2 defeats in a row. Let me know what you think in the comments. So the last one of the early kickoffs on Saturday, we see Wrexham at the Stockhay Ras for the first time this season against West Brom. Oh, it's going to be interesting. Racecourse could be really an intimidating ground to go to for many clubs this season. And it's going to be a test of West Brom's character if they can not feel too overwhelmed by the occasion. Now, Wrexham put off one hell of a fight against Southampton, and in fact they were leading up to the 89th minute, all for it to all slip away, and it was more or less Southampton showing the depth and quality because their goals really came from substitutes that Will still managed to bring onto the pitch, and Wrexham did so well to actually still be winning by that point of the game. Kiefer Moore being out for I think a sustained period of time with injury to his ankle is not great news for Wrexham, but they still have a decent amount of attacking depth, who I think are consistent enough in the Championship. They were one of the sides that really surprised me with how good they were, considering how new this team is, and I think with players still figuring each other out, I think it will be a side that will continue to be better over time. West Brom themselves, I thought, played rather professionally against Blackburn, although I don't think they were challenged all too much in that game. But Isaac Price scored the only goal for West Brom in their 1-0 victory over Blackburn, which I did correctly predict. In terms of their Carabao Cup action, both were involved in penalty shootouts and had different outcomes. And Wrexham were 3-1 down late on and got 2 late goals. So they actually were contributors to the drama for the positive note this time, and they managed to beat Hull on pens. West Brom, as I mentioned, they actually looked so dominant against Derby, but Derby scored their only shot on target, clinical as ever, and he lost on pens. It's typical, isn't it, that they can do so well and they lose out. But I think going into this game, it's going to be interesting. I really do. Wrexham will want to get their first point off the board. There's no doubt about that. And I think with the performance that we saw against Southampton, I think there is some encouragement there. I think we'll see a scoring draw. But I think this will be a high-scoring 2-2 draw. I'm not sure if I predicted a 2-2 draw so far this season. I just have a very funny feeling Wrexham's defence is not quite strong, or at least in this peak strength at this moment of time. I thought individually they play quite well. But West Brom do look a bit of a threat going forward, so I would back both teams to score. But I think it'll be a draw, so I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. We now made it to the 3 o'clock, so we start things off with Bristol City against Charlton, and both will be aiming to get 2 wins out of 2, which I cannot believe I'm saying. They are both within the top 6 coming game week 1. Bristol City with probably the most surprising performance out of anyone, and I was actually going into that Bristol City and Sheffield United game thinking, no side has actually demolished a team yet, and then lo and behold, Bristol City absolutely dismantle and out-assault Sheffield United and was so clinical. Scott Twine with an amazing performance. It really was sensational from him. I was this close adding in to my fantasy EFL, but I didn't in the end, and I'm kicking myself that I did not do it. So he was different class, and Bristol City continued their good form, beating MK Dons in the Carabao Cup as well. Charlton, they left it late, but they got their win in the end against Watford. I think a draw would have been the most disappointing result, but I think they narrowly edged it with the stats against Watford, and it would feel even better for them than they got the win when they did. Harvey Nibbs, who of course was fantastic for Reading and has been fantastic for Reading for a couple of years. He's already probably a Charlton hero, you know, with that goal that has taken Charlton into a really, really good position in the table. Their form continues with a win as well against Stevenage in the Carabao Cup. So both managed to successfully get home wins against lower league opposition. So momentum is high, confidence is high. They both want 2 wins out of 2. We know one team has to give way, or at least one team has to give way here. Prediction is a tough one, but Bristol City's home form has been really strong all season. Charlton away from home have not been very strong last season. That's going to be potentially one area, but I will be keeping my eye on to see if they can improve on that to improve their chances of survival. I think it will go to 2-1 Bristol City. I would not actually be surprised if Charlton lead this, but Bristol City persevere and they get the goals to get all 3 points here. So I'm going to go for a narrow home win to Bristol City here. What do you think in the comments? Next up, we've got Millwall against Middlesbrough. A tough start for Millwall to have Norwich and then followed by Middlesbrough, but it couldn't have been a better start for Millwall because they got their win against Norwich, and if they could get 2 wins out of 2 against Norwich and Middlesbrough, 2 teams that most people will be predicting to be chasing for the playoffs, Millwall will have a really, really good, sense of momentum and a good start to be beating against the teams that they probably should be competing against around them. So Millwall certainly going into this game with some decent confidence. It was a tough one for the Carabao Cup, but they did narrowly squeak a win against Newport County in the end, with Ryan Leonard getting the only goal in the game. But tough certainly typifies for Middlesbrough. Great start with their win over Swansea. However, Carabao Cup, elephant in the room, Riverside losing 4-0 to lower league Doncaster Rovers. Now, Doncaster have had a great start in League One so far. They're actually currently unbeaten in League One and continuing riding the momentum that Grant McCann had led them for winning the League Two title last season. But 4-0 at home is unacceptable by all accounts, whether it's 2 players rotated or 11 players rotated. You can't lose like that at home. So I will be interested to see if there is some fight back with this Middlesbrough side, because I think this is the first adversity they had really after Rob Edwards at this moment. Prediction here, I'm a little bit more confident with Millwall. I was a little bit more impressed with their performance from their recent championship game. I think they're looking really solid at the back at this moment of time. And actually going forward, they offer a little bit of a threat. And someone like Doherty, who can pop by with a really good cross, which I think he was involved with a second goal for Mill against Norwich, is just an added attacking depth, which I think Mill have been missing for so long. So I think Mill will win this by 1-0. I don't see this being high scoring because I think it's very close and competitive based on the squad quality. But I think with Mill at home and with the momentum, I think they could edge Middlesbrough out here. Next up, we see Preston going up against Leicester. So Preston going into this game snatched a point against Queen's Park Rangers, but probably deservedly so. I thought their second half performance against Queen's Park Rangers showed a little bit of signs of encouragement, especially going forward as well, which I was a little bit nervous about them for this season, which initially put me, to put them down in 22nd in my official 1-24 predictions. But if they are going to find those rare moments of quality going forward, I mean, that Osmaic goal was so special. I think that could help Preston get out of some really difficult relegation battles. Leicester, I don't think were good as anyone expected them to be, because they narrowly limped over the line against a Sheffield Wednesday side who have certainly had their squad decimated from what has been going on off the pitch. Of course, I will give all my praises to Sheffield Wednesday. I thought they were absolutely magnificent. but I do think Leicester were below the pace there. And that led to their Carabao Cup game as well, where, to be fair as well, they're playing against a really informed League One team in Huddersfield Town, who are playing really confidently at the moment and have got almost a brand new team as their starting 11. They lost out to them in the end on penalties. They'll feel very disappointed that they gave away the lead in 2 separate occasions. Preston, they narrowly beat Barrow away from home by 1-0. So different outcomes for both of those sides in the Carabao Cup. How would that do in this game? Well, it'll be interesting to see how Preston do at home. I've not seen Preston yet play at Deepdale this season, so whether they're going to be strong is going to be interesting. Iverson, the Preston goalkeeper, of course, is facing against his former clubs, so that might make things a little bit interesting in that part as well. This is a tough one for a prediction because I can honestly see either side winning by 1 goal. But because I'm sitting on the fence for both of those outcomes, I'm going to even it out with a draw. I'm going for a 1-1 draw here. I've not predicted too many draws so far, I don't think. So I will therefore predict this one as a draw. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments. We were just speaking about Sheffield Wednesday. They're the next team we're going to predict. They've got a home game against Stoke. How this game will go will be interesting because I do feel like they should still be able to stage some form of protest, and especially with it being at home, I think they could definitely organise things a lot more smoothly and better there as well. So whether the protest will continue, I think there will still continue here. Hopefully it still leads them to one step closer to getting the club to the best it could be. But both sides I thought were very spirited in their games. Sheffield Wednesday, whilst they did lose, I think they put in one hell of a performance. I mean, Chalobah getting the goal, and unfortunately with him going off injured, so cruel. And then Barry Bannon getting sent off for 2 yellow cards. He may likely serve his suspension for this game. So it's going to be a tough one for Sheffield Wednesday going into this game. Stoke, they actually won by 2 goals against Derby County, and because of that, they're right near the top of the table. And I thought it was a really good second half performance, and actually a brilliant response to when they went behind as well. I think we've seen Stoke teams in the past that if they do have an adversity, they typically curl up and they just don't know what to do. But they did really well, Stoke, actually, to come back at Derby and to score 3 late goals. So I'm decently encouraged with how Stoke are looking. And Carabao Cup action, I mean, both had to use penalty shootouts to go through, but both did go through. So Sheffield Wednesday beat Bolton Wanderers in a pretty dramatic game that led to the shootout. Stoke, they had to play against Walsall, which I would like to say is a bit of a local derby. I don't know if they are nearby or not, but either way, Stoke did manage to go through on that game, interestingly. So prediction. Unfortunately, I think while Sheffield Wednesday will still again offer everything they've got, with no Bannon and Chalobah being injured for this game likely, I think Stoke will win this one. I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory to the Potters. Yeah, it's a harsh one this, but I still think with the spirit of the Sheffield Wednesday side, I think they will start picking up points soon. I just don't think it's going to quite fall for them just yet. Next up, we've got Swansea going up against Sheffield United. Now, in terms of their championship performance, these two would have been 2 sides that I actually would have considered performed one of the worst in terms of their performances in their opening game for differing reasons. So Swansea only lost out by 1-0 against Middlesbrough in the end, but the very lack they created was quite shocking. Only 3 shots in that entire game is very surprising for how little they threatened Middlesbrough all game. But they did follow up with a good win in the Carabao Cup against League 2 Crawley. Sheffield United, I mean, obviously the whole team talk on the pitch happened Phil Brown style. Well, not quite Phil Brown style, but it gives me deja vu of that. And it's just embarrassing, isn't it? And I get that he's frustrated and it was a really bad one and probably did it to show that he is really not happy with what he saw. But then that was followed by a defeat against Birmingham in the Carabao Cup. Now, I've got to say, we clearly saw some really good individual performances from Sheffield United, and still, especially actually against Bristol City, they created so much, but they just weren't clinical. So I wonder if that might be a problem that Sheffield United will need to address going into their next couple of games. But Swansea, I thought at home, were pretty good last season, and I think they will be a team, Swansea, that will improve over time. So I don't think we're going to get exactly the best version of themselves until much later on. Honestly, Sheffield United, I feel, need to win this to really state, a little bit of optimism for the fans. But I'm not seeing it. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I still think there's still quite a lot that needs to be sorted out. There just needs to be this essence of calm within this team. And I just don't think there is that calm at the moment. And it's not quite as unified as I saw from them last season. And I think it will take something quite drastic for them to get that back. But I just think it could be a pretty rocky start for Sheffield United. I'm not seeing... if I am seeing signs, it's only very brief signs going forward, but defensively, oh my gosh, shocker. So I'm going to go for a draw, a scoring draw in this game. Let me know what you think in the comments. Next up, we've got Watford and Queen's Park Rangers. Bit of a London derby this. So, Watford, start of the season, not a great result, a narrow 1-0 defeat to Charlton, and it was one where I felt they did have moments, but it just wasn't anything anywhere near from what I was expecting from this Watford side. I'm feeling a little bit nervous, and I may have predicted them a little bit too high. I had predicted them to do good things this season, but not quite gelling at the moment. And then I thought there were a little bit more encouraging signs in the Carabao Cup. Yes, they lost to Norwich, but I felt going forward they looked quite a fair bit more threatening than they did against Charlton. So I do think that's something that they could take going into this game. Queen's Park Rangers are going through quite an interesting time at the moment. So obviously they drew to Preston, probably should have won it. So they did surrender the lead. And then against Plymouth in the Carabao Cup, what an unbelievable game that was. They lost in the end, a 5-goal thriller by 3-2. We'll see if that kickstarts Plymouth's season, who they themselves are really, really struggling. I think 2 defeats in a row for Plymouth. But for Queen's Park Rangers' point of view, no game has been boring seeing them so far, but they are conceding quite a fair few lorry load of goals. But with the addition of Koenig up front, I do think he could potentially play for Queen's Park Rangers here. I'm excited to see how that functions here. So I do think there's pros and cons for both sides, but again, I'm not confident in either one of them. I was thinking maybe home advantage and back Watford, but I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw again. I think it'll be a frustrating one for both clubs at this moment of time as they still look for their first win of the season. Now made it to the 2 final Sunday games. So this one's going to be a corker. Ipswich versus Southampton. Oh, I'm nervous for this one if I was supporting Ipswich for this game. So for form books going into this game, Ipswich drew against Birmingham. Pretty fortunate circumstances. I watched it live and it was a very contentious penalty. I think technically in the rule books it probably would have been a penalty, but I do think it was pretty speculative with how late the game was as well. So understandably Birmingham were quite frustrated in that game as well. And just the lack of refereeing consistency is just something that's going to rile fans all the time. With Southampton, they left it late but did an amazing comeback against Wrexham. What an unbelievable free kick by Ryan Manning to get the equaliser, and Jack Stevens, who's not scored in a long time, what a hero to complete the comeback for Southampton's point of view there. And just what I will say going into both of these sides, I think Southampton's squad is much stronger than Ipswich's squad at this moment of time. Carabao Cup, Ipswich lost out to lower league opposition on penalties. Bromley with a very famous win. It's their first ever Carabao Cup win. So a good bit of history, but it is against Ipswich Town, which doesn't surprise me. And for Southampton, they did get a win in the end. A narrow 1-0 win against Northampton Town. And I believe it was Mateus Fernandes who actually was the goal scorer for Southampton. I do think Southampton are the favourites. I think the bookies will still edge Ipswich because they're at home and with the options that they got going forward. To me, defensively, I think Ipswich look good, actually. I don't mind defensively. I think midfield's a problem. I don't think they're strong enough in their midfield areas as of yet. If Kajust comes back, I think that will improve, but he will still need a couple of games for his peak to start going back to that squad again. And then going forward, whilst on paper there are so many goals in that team, they're not clicking at the moment. So I'm not too convinced with their attack either. And I do think this will really highlight how good it will be in this game, because they will be expecting to try and dominate the ball. Southampton, I just think they look so dangerous. They could score so many goals. I think they accrued the highest XG out of all championship clubs. You know, whether that's Wrexham being quite lackadaisical defensively, I think it was more or less that Southampton were really good going forward. So I do think defence for Southampton could be a bit of a problem. That could be the one silver lining for Ipswich here. But honestly, I think Southampton would beat them. They did the double, well, not quite the double, but they managed to win 4 points against Ipswich last season. So a third of their points came against Ipswich. I think they'll get another 3 here. 2-1 Southampton I'm going for here. Maybe I'm sounding a bit pessimistic, but based on the first 2 performances, I've not been blown away from Ipswich yet. So I think they will eventually start playing at their peak, but maybe not for a good couple of weeks. And Southampton, I've seen enough that actually, whilst they are still quite weak defensively, I think they can still rally forward and do well going forward. Final game to predict is Hull versus Oxford. Okay, Hull going into this game had that draw against Coventry, a good clean sheet away from home, and defensively looks really good actually. So I think that is going to be a dominant part in what they play. They'll be building up from their defence, and then eventually I think they will start producing a lot more attack-minded opportunities. I think the Carabao Cup game kind of threw that out the window a little bit. With Oxford, it was very disappointing that they lost at home, because Oxford's form, or big part of why they stayed up last season, was because of their home form. That to me already makes me feel a little bit nervous about Oxford's chances this season. But despite that, it's not all doom and gloom. I actually thought Oxford did create quite a few decent opportunities, and I think on another day they would have got a better result against Portsmouth. So I think context is quite important when assessing those situations there. So Hull, they lost out in the Carabao Cup in the end to Wrexham. I already spoke about it. They were in cruise control and really, really comfortable. But late drama, 2 late goals, they'll be very disappointed to concede those. And they lose out on pens as well. So I feel ultimately, if you are going to give away a lead like that, you ultimately get what you deserve, because then you keep your eye off the ball and you get too overconfident. So it will be a harsh lesson that Hull will need to take. Oxford, they beat my local EFL team, Colchester. I did watch the game, and I got to say, Tyler Grudgeon, great goal. I can't complain. It was an absolute strike from just outside the box, I believe. So I can't have any complaints about that. I could complain how Colchester couldn't score, but you can't deny that's a moment of quality that very few goalkeepers will be able to save. So fair play to Oxford going through on that game. Okay, interesting situation here with these two sides. I do think this will be low scoring. I really do. Oxford away from home, I think, will even be more defensive than normal going into this one. Hull, I think, will be expected to dominate games a little bit, so it'll be an interesting dynamic here. But Hull at home actually were quite poor last season, so I'll be interested to see if Jurkiewicz can improve that this season. Oxford on the road weren't particularly great until later on in the season when Gary Rowett allowed them to play Route 1 long throw football, and they managed to get some results. I feel like this got a 1-0 win either way. And I wouldn't be surprised if Oxford could get a result, but I'm actually going to go for Hull. I think there's a little bit more excitement that I'm getting from their attacking line, especially from their last Carabao Cup game. I think I'm going to go for a 1-0 victory to Hull, but I actually would not be surprised if it ends as a 0-0 draw. So, yeah, I'll go for a goal here. Let me know what you think in the comments. So there you have it. These are my score predictions for the Championship Week 2 games. If you could predict the games in the comments down below, you will automatically score some points on the Lexalexus Football Prediction League, which I think I'll post an update for when we have our international break, which will only be in about 2 weeks' time from now. If you guys enjoyed, please like and subscribe and share. It really, really does help. Subscribers target. We're trying to get to maybe 4,000 subscribers this season, probably a bit ambitious, but we're doing relatively well. And I've got to say thank you guys for the terrific support from the last video of this one. Hopefully this one does well as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary over to the end of this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.